All right, everybody. I'm Taylor. This is September 5th, 2023. It's a Cranky comic book review show, and I've got somewhat of a stack of books this week. One I missed out on because the LCS ran out, even though I got there on a Tuesday right after they put them out. So the guy didn't order enough, which I guess is on me. We can get into it. It doesn't matter. I don't pre-order at the LCS because, other than the guarantee to get in the book, there's no benefit. There's no discount. There's no... Yeah, that's about it. I'm used to every other LCS I've ever shopped at. You get a bit of a discount when you pre-order stuff and you subscribe to books. Not at the one across the street. They don't do that. Instead, what they do is they kind of punish you and say, oh, well, you canceled this book, but we didn't catch it in time, so you're either still going to pay for it or you're just paying the money for it. Which I get. They don't need to. There's razor slim margins on comics, and it's not the glamorous thing. However, if you have regular customers that have been coming in for a long ass time, punishing them is not the way to go. Rewarding them, a little bit better. Anyways, that's my rant. So I missed out on Peacemaker Tries Hard number 5. I will figure it out. I'll get it later because I've really been liking that series, and I really wanted to read it. There's a good chance it might have been the best book of this week, but instead we've got this. And I didn't get a couple other things, like the JSA I kind of just wasn't feeling enough, and I was feeling cheap. And there's at least one other one that I can't remember, which is kind of funny because I spent $6 on a chai oat latte this morning, so that lasted about 30 seconds. I probably could have read the JSA in about 30 seconds too, so maybe it's a wash, but I don't know. Doesn't matter. Anyways, worst to best, let's do this. Moon Knight, number 27. And this is not actually an especially bad story. It's Jed McKay. It's 27 issues in. You kind of should move the mic closer for the rest of this, Taylor. Sorry, I'm a rookie. And I just yelled into the mic as I moved it closer because I'm an idiot. Whatever. Anyways, it's been a weekend of Labor Day and drinking and shenanigans and weddings and meeting up with the old comic YouTubers slotted up at 8 or 8 p.m. I got to hang out with those guys. Back to the review because I'm a pro. And I'm not editing this. I'm tired. The story's fine. This is Hunter's Moon and Moon Knight. They go into someone's head. That's the basic setup. And, don't want to spoil it further than that. What's holding this issue back really is the art by Sabatini. Capuccio's art is really missed on this title when he's not here. Sabatini feels like he's doing a copycat version instead of coming up with his own stuff, and it doesn't always work. You get, some of the inky fluidness that you get from Capuccio, but the faces are off, and, the inking and the other stuff, it just doesn't really fit. And I like abstracted art, and I'm a fan of comic creators doing their own thing and comic artists doing their own thing. But some of the blockiness and some of it just doesn't really translate all that well. It's okay, but it really just kind of dragged this book down. I was it was to the point where if you... How I sometimes feel about comic art is if you don't notice it, it's doing its job. And when you notice it, you either notice it because it's amazing or because there's something about it that bugs you. And this bugged me. There's fake halftones throughout it. The faces and the inking just didn't really seem to work. And it's a weird blend of copycat Capuccio art and then cartoony faces that just the balance wasn't there. It's probably kind of closer to this. And so it dragged the story. It dragged it all down for me. It was distracting. And it makes my worst book of the week. Not that it's awful. Nothing this week is really, truly that bad. But, something's got to be at the bottom of the stack. So here we go. Or first of the list, or however you do these things. And then we have next, the final issue of Barnstormers. This is Barnstormers number 3. Tula Lotte and Scott Snyder. This is a fine enough ending. Tula Lotte's art is great. And it does wrap up the story. It does feel a little bit rushed, this issue. I do feel like they could have maybe spread this into 2, honestly. There could have been a 2-part thing here that would have paced it better. Instead, it just kind of felt like a very quick and final ending to this all. The art is gorgeous. Tula Lotte's painted art is fantastic. Here's the thing. $5 book, right? This is literally the halfway mark. So instead of turning it into 2 issues, you get ephemera at the back. You get the original pitch, you get some sketches, and you get some covers. And it's not awful to pay $5 for it. Like I said, I paid $6 for a fucking latte this morning. But, it's just, I would rather have more story than this. And I think the story would have been a better told tale if it were split up. There's like there's an A story and a B story in this issue with the framing device, and instead of the framing device, he's just split it into 2 issues. Like it would have been a better tale. And it's fine. It's a solid ending. Either get it from your library or read it collected. Don't pay $5 for this issue. Don't. I mean, I think you can probably get it on Comixology, and if you subscribe to that, it might be part of it. I think that's where this was originally conceived or ran, and then now it's in print. So do it there. Maybe your pacing, you won't be bugged by the pacing as much if you don't see like you're done and then you got half the book to go. Maybe that's just a psychological thing on my end where I'm like, I want more fucking story, damn it! Don't just give me this bullshit and charge me for it. Whatever. It's good. It's actually a solid story. I actually like the ending, but I just think it really should have had more room to breathe, especially in these last 2 issues. I think this last story, I think the first 2 issues were better paced, and you got more bang for your buck, and that, so it is what it is. Next, this one came out a while back, but like, I didn't get it because the LCS didn't work. We've been over that. So I hunt these things down a little bit later, and then, if I can find them, if I put forth the effort, and decide it's worth it. I have really liked Firepower previously, and I was kind of curious to see after the break how it would do. I like the first issue back after the break. This issue feels a little bit more fillery. It's kind of like a training montage issue. It's still Chris Samney's art, and it's great. A lot of fairly verbose dialogue for a Kirkman book, and it doesn't really do much to the plot. So I think I might actually be on the trade paperback train from here on out. So like I might finish this arc because it's probably about halfway through or 2 issues in, so that the money might be a wash at this point. But I think at this point, I think I might actually really wait and like just read it collected. I think it'll probably be a better read. Like I said, I like Chris Samney's simplicity. He's an excellent storyteller. His art is fantastic, and like you're really almost never confused about what's going on in a panel. And he's got this sort of chunkiness to him that reminds me a little of Jack Kirby. Not like doesn't have the foreshortening and the exaggerated hands, especially and the facial features that Kirby has. But he's just got that sense of storytelling that I think really pays homage to Kirby, and I'm a fan. I love Samney's art. I know he's not for everyone. I know a lot of people like the more detailed, like Jim Lee, kind of Todd McFarlane. We need 4,000 lines broken up and crosshatched to tell a story, which I sometimes like, but I just would much rather have like a simple, blocky, chunky, like well done art than some nonsense where you don't know what the fuck's going on. So there's that. And then we have Batman number 137. Yeah, this is Chip Zdarsky, and Jorge Jimenez. The art, 4,000 lines to tell a story, and it's Jimenez. He's got the more detailed stuff. Although this, for being a Jimenez book, is fairly free of some of it. Like it seems like an exercise issue on this one too. It's a $5 book, so it probably is. So you don't get all of the detail you normally get in an Jorge Jimenez art book. It doesn't necessarily feel rushed. It just feels a little bit more simplified, or that he's like letting the colorist finally and the inker finally do their shit instead of just filling it up with stuff. As far as the story goes, Zdarsky finally feels like he's coming into his own on this title. You get some of the stuff that was set up in Failsafe, the previous arc, and some of the other stuff, and then the Zurn weird mental construct of Batman-y thingy going on here. And it's part of the Gotham War, which I've not been reading. So it's Batman versus Catwoman, where Catwoman is a dirty hippie socialist who thinks that reducing crime is better than trying to wipe out all crime. And Batman's like, no, you can't do that. You have to all crime is crime, damn it. And so they're fighting. Mom and Dad are having a dispute. I probably tend to land on the more like, if it's not a violent crime, let them go. But, whatever. That doesn't go so well in the comic book world. People have managed to misinterpret the Punisher for years, and Blue Lives Matter, and blah, 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 blah. We're not going to get into all that, because that'll just be completely canceled on this channel, but whatever. Catwoman's right, Batman's wrong. Batman's a borderline fascist, and probably not, in the real world, not so great. And also, eat the rich. But it's an entertaining book, and it does feel like Chip actually does have something to say in this title, finally. Like the first arc didn't really feel like it, but this is actually, now you're thinking, oh, there's actually kind of a plan to this, maybe? Like there might be something like where he's like thought ahead more than just a couple issue arcs, and he's going to have a bigger overarching thing, like message behind this. I could be down. We'll see. Maybe. This issue is good. There's just other stuff I like this week a little bit better. So it's hard to be cranky this week. There's actually a fair amount of good books. Maybe it's because I had my latte and I'm all caffeinated. Next, issue number 1. I think this is the first comic from a lot of these people too. It's Parker and Sheridan and Quinn and Hill. Parker and Sheridan are the writers and Quinn is the artist. Kill Your Darlings. Probably my favorite named of a title, by the way. It feels like a 1990s goth metal band, and it might very well be. It's probably not original. But the art is pretty simple. Not simple. It feels like a modern comic. I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just like you get the digital coloring. You get a lot of the heavy lifting being done by said coloring. It's not the inks are there. Obviously, they're not. It's just not crazily heavily inked, and the colorist is just really doing like balls out work on this. And that and that's Robert Quinn doing the okay. So Robert Quinn is doing the art and the coloring. Sometimes it gets split up in comics, but this is one person handling, which makes sense. And this is a young girl with an imaginary world and living with her mother who is struggling to make ends meet financially. That's the setup. I don't want to go into spoiler territory on this one, and I'm not going to show you a lot of what happens later in this book. This book is mostly setup. It's a very thick cover and printed well. It's probably my favorite printed book of the week. And there's a fantasy world that this girl imagines with heroes that are her stuffed animals, and then the mom is just fighting and possibly doing other stuff as a grown-up to try and make ends meet. And then the daughter is kind of oblivious to it all and has a friend at school, but not so much really. And so you're kind of left at the end of this wondering what's real, what's not, what the mental state of the girl is, and what she's seeing is real or if it's imagined. And it kind of there's this interplay that's kind of nice, and I'm digging on this. So we will see. This one could slip down pretty heavily if it doesn't do anything interesting in the next issue. But I like this first issue setup, especially for what I think are first-time writers in Parker and Sheridan. I think they did a pretty great job, and they didn't fall into the comic book trap of explaining instead of showing. They're letting the art show what they're talking about instead of going overly verbose and just having dialogue boxes and or plot boxes where they're just saying, hey, this is what happened. They're just letting the art do its thing, which I think is a really tricky thing for early writers to do. So give the art room to breathe, and they've done it, and I dig it. So Kill Your Darlings, number 1. Pretty good issue. All right, we're getting towards, how am I going to, hang on a second. Yeah, I'm going to do this one next. This is the final issue of Room Crypto Killaz. It's the last of all the Red Rooms, I believe, from Ed Piskor. This is a gross goddamn book in more ways than one. It's just probably the most disturbing issue of this yet. I'm not going to open it up and show it to you. Ed Piskor has got this black on cream that he's done throughout this whole thing with white. So there's a duotone or two-color book, really. So you get white and cream and black. That's the palette he's using. And the story itself is just a very disturbing tale of a kidnapping and a small town religious fanatic that's struck with religious fanaticism and Amish-ish community, a very blatant stand-in for the Amish, and then what happens to the woman who was kidnapped and forced to become a Red Room sex slave. That's this thing. It is the end. I don't know if it's a fitting end, but man, I have a pretty strong stomach. I don't. Most of the horror stuff doesn't get to me. Most of it, I just kind of okay. But this one is oof. It's borderline. This is tough. I don't think everyone's gonna love this issue. And even if you read other Red Room stuff, this is taking it to a whole nother level. For good or bad, it's just that's where it is. And this is just one of those issues. You're holy crap! How do you talk about this one? So. I don't really know, so I'm not going to a whole lot. I think Ed's doing what he wants to do. He had a vision, and he executed that vision. And for what he wanted to do, I think he did it pretty well and pretty flawlessly. I don't know if I agree with the vision. I'm not the creator. I don't necessarily have to. It makes critiquing it a little bit tricky when it's a singular person doing all this stuff, and that they're just doing it to do it, and also doing it to get a rise out of people. So it's going to get a rise out of people. it's going to be disturbing. It might be the most disturbing book of the year. It's the most disturbing book I've read in a long fucking time. So, Room Crypto Killaz number 4, the end of Red Room. I think next Ed's going to do like daily comic strip, which is going to be a whole different beast. But I like Ed's art. I like Red Room for the most part. That one is just kind of a gross out way to end it all, which makes sense. It ended on top or bottom, whatever. All right, next. I'm switching these up again too. Yeah, all right. W. Maxwell Prince and Felipe Andrade. Swan Song's number 3. Is this? Yeah, issue number 3. W. Maxwell Prince must just have like a notebook full of like little excerpts of ideas or little paragraphs. There's like Twilight Zone stories or like his brain just seems to work in a way that like he has an infinite amount of like one and done stories that don't feel like a crammed in short story, but like really feel like an effective use of the 22 or whatever 30 pages in a comic. And he's great at pacing them, and he's great at like telling these like stories that like don't need to go any further. He's done the writer of Ice Cream Man, and in Swan Songs he's branching out a little and working with different artists. That's the big difference. And there's no like Ice Cream Man framing device. The framing device, the sort of thing here is Swan Songs is about endings, and this is a end of the world ending and video game survival horror creepiness shenanigans and a couple building new beginnings in a way too. Andrade's art is very sketchy and very kind of bright and pastelish for most of this, which kind of belies the subject matter. Like you're getting like full cyan plate with just black text, or you're getting very light pastel work, which is like almost too light, but instead of like conforming to like the nuclear wasteland that is the setting and backdrop of all this, it's kind of like playing against type, and I dig it. It's like the art is kind of like a simple, beautiful, like little bit of sketchiness to it, and then it goes all W. Maxwell Princey. I don't want to spoil the ending, but like there's a setup that pays off, and it ends. And you're like, God damn it, that sucks, but it's fitting. And it's a good story. So, like, it's ranking number 2. It came very close to getting number 1 for me today. But I have one more that I just wanted to put at number 1. And, like, not everyone's going to agree with it, but I don't give a shit. Do your own review show, people. Sons of bitches. Number 1. The Sacrificers, issue number 2. I love the cover. This is Rick Remender and Max Fiumara. Fiumara's art reminds me in ways of Daniel Warren Johnson. He's got this inky fluidness to the art that really kind of works well in some panels and then lets some of the other panels like work without doing the heavy lifting. Not every panel in here is a panel that's like full of detail or grace or information, but the ones that are, like, it really does like have notes of like of W. Maxwell Prince, especially in like the facial features and some of the characters. This is a new sci-fi or fantasy world set up by Remender, and like you have anthropomorphic characters. I'm gonna say that one, like bird characters and whale characters that are all like half human, half whale, half bird, half whale. And the title of the series, The Sacrificers, starts to become more clear in this issue, although there's debate. And even at the end, you're like, I'm not sure if it's real. But what I do like is like it's not your typical hack and slash fantasy. Like I mean, there's some fighting and there's some like setup in here that like this issue is mostly setup now that I think about it. But I'm liking the setup, and even though it's an issue number 2, like, and it's almost devoid of like fantasy battle and action. There's a little bit of it. It's a really interesting world, and like the ideas that are presented that might or might not be true are interesting enough to push it to the top. Some of it is I might just have been jonesing for a good fantasy series, and this one had grabbed me and it held on for 2 issues. So like, is this maybe the best single issue this month? I don't know. Probably not. That might actually have to go to Swan Songs. But I like what's going on in here, and I like the world building, and I really am more excited to see where this one goes than the next issue of Swan Songs. That's not knocking Swan Songs at all. Like, I love Swan Songs, and I will happily read the next issue. But at this point, W. Maxwell Prince has set up these expectations where you're kind of like, you're in for a certain kind of ride with him every issue. Whereas this, there's a little bit of like wondering what the fuck's going to happen next time. And because it's not a one and done like this is, and like you're in the early stages of what's looking to be a very large, very involved story, it just kind of hooks me. It's got that whole like the beginning of the Lord of the Rings or the Hobbit or like this Chronicles of Narnia, where you just get like sucked in. You're like, ooh, I wonder what's going to happen next. And for a comic to leave me thinking, I wonder what's going to happen next, that's kind of a rare thing nowadays. I'm pretty old and jaded and tired, hence the name of the Cranky Comic Book Review Show. But this one's grabbed me, and it's my favorite book of the week. Possibly my favorite cover of the week. Probably the favorite cover of the week. But the favorite title. Actually, this one. Actually, I think this title. I think this cover too. The Killer Down. So, whatever. Pretty good week for comics, honestly. Even the worst one isn't bad. I mean, it's the Sabatini's art on Moon Knight just didn't grab me. So, that's all I've got. There's the comic book review show. No, wait. Comic book CBCA. Comic Book Awards. CBC Awards. Comic Book Channel Awards. Comic Book Review. Whatever. Go vote for your favorite creators. I'll leave a link down below. I'm nominated for Best Review Channel. I'm not going to win. Vote for whoever you like, though. If you like my reviews and watch them, I'd love it. But like, I know there's a lot of review channels out there, and the other ones that are nominated are all great. So just vote for whoever the hell you like. And just go look down the other categories. Maybe you'll like find new creators you like watching. And that's kind of what this is all about. You get to build a community. You get to discover new things. And like, it doesn't hurt to like, throw a little free love to people's way if you do enjoy what they've been doing. Somebody might get a little award in the mail and be like, holy crap, that made my day. So, cbcawards.org. Link down below. All right, I'm out of here. See you next week. Later.